Hello, everyone. I'm Cynthia Myers-Morrison and your host for Food Addiction Institute.org YouTubes. And today it is my pleasure to introduce Eve R. to you. She is a food addict in recovery and in recovery a long time. So here she goes. Eve.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Cindy said, I am Evar, and I am a food addict. Where do I begin? uh, I have always been struggling with compulsive eating when I wasn't hungry, eating when I was happy, eating when I was sad, and it was a thing that was really stopping me from having a fulfilled life. And I went to this thing it was called the Forum. Some people know it as EST. I think it's now called something else. But it was a weekend where you were supposed to get in touch with what was keeping you from having a fulfilled life. And it was at that weekend, at the end of the time, somebody came up to me and said that she knew of a 12-step program that would help me. And she said, and she told me where the meeting was going to be the next day. And I went to my first meeting, and the speaker gave my story. And I was amazed because this was somebody who came from an affluent home. And I thought the reason that I had all of these issues was because I was born in 1939 in Poland. And when my mother and I were deported to Siberia. So my first 7 years were spent in concentration camps, work camps, and so food was scarce. And so I thought that that's what my problem was because it wasn't that I was eating, but I was hiding. I was hiding. As a matter of fact, my stepfather said whenever we would be invited out for dinner at friends, he always made us eat before we left the house because he didn't want us to look like we were starving. So we wouldn't eat a lot. We would go there full. So I always had this idea that eating in public or showing that you were hungry was not acceptable. So I was fortunate enough to work in a dress shop with these three wonderful women who were always on a diet. I was 16 at the time, and they taught me how to drink black coffee. They told me the right things to eat when you're on a diet. I was 16, but I blossomed. I all of a sudden I had these huge boobs, and I thought, oh, I'm getting fat. Clothes were tight, so I started dieting at 16, and they taught me how to drink coffee, black, and I was awful. I thought it was the most horrible thing. And they said, "You're going to bless us," and I'll tell you, there were so many times over the years that I have blessed those three women that taught me how to drink black coffee. Anyway, from then on, I was always on a diet. I would gain 20 pounds, I would lose 10 pounds, I would gain 20 pounds. It was back and forth all my life. I was either eating or on a diet. And it was, I think I went on every single diet there was, but there was one diet, I forgot whether it was called the Stillman diet or anyway, where you did not have any sugar in your body. You had to do ketos to make sure that your urine didn't have sugar. And I lost the most weight on that because I could eat pretty much everything I wanted in huge quantities, but couldn't have any sugar. And I thought, wow, this is wonderful because I lost weight and I was able to eat what I wanted. But it was from that particular diet that once I did ingest sugar, it created a craving that I had little children and I would hide sugar stuff away from them. As a matter of fact, I would hide them in the laundry basket under all the laundry so that they wouldn't go anywhere near my stash. And that's how it was. I mean, I would just, it was the first time that I kind of hid food and, did all that, but I never really had that craving that would come on that the thought would hit and I would immediately have to act on it. There was no pause, nothing. And that's how it was. And then when I went to this meeting and this woman was talking about the way she was with food, and she certainly didn't come from a background like mine. She came from an affluent background. So I thought, well, it's sugar. That's the problem. As long as I don't eat sugar, and that's when I stopped having sugar. And it was a miracle. It really was a miracle because I didn't have that craving. And uh, I lost weight, and I have to backtrack just a bit. The only time that I didn't diet was when I was pregnant with my second daughter, and I had a toddler in the stroller, and I was pregnant, and I was living in New York City, and I would take that toddler for a walk, and we would go and if anybody who's lived in New York City, I mean, there are bakeries and stores on every block. And I was just going crazy. I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I got to the point where I was 225 pounds. My doctor was so upset with me because I had toxemia, I had gestational diabetes, and he kept telling me, "You're going to kill yourself and you're going to kill the baby that you're carrying." And you know what? Even knowing that, I could not stop eating sugar. I would make promises to myself, but I just couldn't do it. Fortunately, I didn't die and my baby was fine and I did lose the weight. So getting back to where I digressed from. So, and it was wonderful. And then after a few years of not having sugar, this is how the mind works. It's amazing. I had read someplace that all of the cells in your body change every so many years, and that you get new cells. And so in my little brain, I decided that maybe I wasn't addicted to sugar anymore. Maybe my body changed. In the meantime, I had met my second husband and I was in a relationship. And of course, that was one of the things for me. If I was in a relationship, food didn't matter. I mean, I could go days without eating. You could always tell I was to make a joke. If you knew I was in a relationship, if my legs were shaved and I stopped eating. So I don't know which was it was, but and he did not eat compulsively. He actually left food on his plate. I thought, oh my God, I've never known anybody not to clean their plate. So I thought that God put this man in my life because as long as I did what he did, I would be fine. And lo and behold, occasionally I would have something that had sugar and I didn't have the craving. I thought, wow, I don't have that anymore. My cells have changed. I no longer need this anymore. I can live a normal life. And I did for several years, not knowing that this man who wasn't interested in food was an alcoholic. He loved to drink. I mean, he would drink 12 beers at night. And I don't understand how, they say that denial is a river in Egypt. Well, it's right here. So once I put two and two together, and there was one time that we were sitting after doing gardening, and we were talking about because we had been fighting and whatnot, and I said something to him about not being happy in the relationship and da da da. And he said, "Well, you are getting a little pudgy." And I thought, oh my God. I had put on about 10 pounds. This man doesn't know what I can do. I went on a cruise and I gained 30 pounds in a weekend. And he's talking about 10 pounds. So right then and there, I said, this marriage is not going to work. I was married for 5 years. I said, this is it. And I said to him, okay, we don't have children in common. We have nothing. We can go our separate ways. And he thought I was kidding. I called my attorney the next day, and this was in July. By October, I was divorced. I had bought him out of the house and it was finished. But what happened to me is I became depressed. Why did I marry an alcoholic? What's wrong with me? And as my depression increased, my desire for food increased. I started eating with a vengeance, not just sugar, but carbs. As a matter of fact, I was eating carbs, craving. And uh, I remember going to my accountant in January, and he hadn't seen me since the year before. And the first thing he said to me, boy, Eve, you really porked up. Because by now I'm pushing 190. And I thought, oh my God. I stopped looking in my body and I stopped weighing myself. I would just look in mirrors for my head. And I thought, oh my goodness. And then I discovered another 12-step program, which not only sugar, but that my body was like a distillery and anything that you could make alcohol out of. And that means starch, carbs, grains. When it hits my body and fruits that you can make alcohol out of, when it hit my body, it was the same thing as an alcoholic when he has the first drink. It created that craving. And it all made sense to me because it wasn't so much that I was eating sugar, it was the carbs. I was eating, I mean, the French ones, the Italian ones, you name it. And that's what I wanted. And so I stopped eating grains, sugar, starches, fruits that you could make alcohol out of. And lo and behold, that craving left. Today, I am 86 years old. I've been doing this for 30 years. I have one of these wonderful Fitbits that marks how many steps I take. I take a minimum of 10,000 steps a day. I do yoga 4 times a week. I do weight training twice a week. I do aerobics once a week. And I am healthier today and I am thinner today than I was at age 55 when I started on this program. It's a 12-step program where I weigh and measure my food. I only eat 3 meals a day, nothing in between. And I am free. I have a freedom. I can live my life. I am not obsessed of what I'm going to eat, when I'm going to eat, can I eat it, can I not eat it? All of that conversation is gone out of my head. And I have a a life beyond my wildest dreams. I am happy and very content. You know, happiness is something that's fleeting. So saying happy is not, joyous and free, but being content, and that's where I am in my life. I am very, very content. And all I have to do is just weigh and measure my 3 meals a day with nothing in between. And here I am. Thank you for letting me tell my story. I hope it touched someone.
Eve, I'm sure that it will. Will you talk just a few minutes more about what are the kinds of things that supported this change that occurred? Because there are a whole bunch
Well,
of things that you do in a day that are supportive of that change.
well, the person who introduced me to this program, this 12-step program, told me from the very beginning, that this was a program where I had to take care of myself. That was a concept that was totally alien to me. I was always the last person. I mean, if it was something burned, it's something that wasn't that's the part I got. I never ever put myself first. But she said I had to put myself first. I had to take care of myself like I would. I have two daughters, like I would one of my children. What would I do for my children if they had something that they needed to have taken care of? I would move mountains. And she said, well, you know what? You have to do that for yourself. But she also told me that I didn't have to do it by myself. I have a community of people who do, like-minded people who have the same disease of addiction to sugar and carbs, and I'm not doing it alone. I can pick up the phone and call somebody if I'm going through something. There isn't anything that I have had to face that someone in my community has not faced it before me. So I'm walking through this in a community, and that's probably the most important thing because I all my diets were on my own, did it all by myself, but this is something that I can't do by myself. I have a disease that's sitting there, right on my shoulder that says, "Oh, Eve, look at you. You look great." I mean, people tell me all the time. They say, "Oh my God, you look great." And sometimes I say, "Well, what is it that you do?" And when I tell them, they say, "Oh, I don't think I could do that." You mean not even on your birthday? Not even on this day? You can't have a carb? But it's special. Why can't, no, as far as I'm concerned, that's like crack cocaine. It's just not my food. And that's just how I look at it. It's just not my food. I know what my food is, and that's what I consume, not this other stuff. It doesn't, it's not part of my, so I don't know if that helps.
That that helps. And my understanding is that you do things in your 12-step community and outside in your regular everyday community. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Um, when I moved to where I'm living now, I was 70 years old and uh, it was a brand new community. I got a little apartment in my daughter's house. She needed help with my granddaughter. And the first thing she said to me, Mom, there's a great Y in the area. I think it'd be great if you went to the Y. I went to the Y. I didn't know if I could afford the monthly because I had been living with my other daughter where pretty much all my expenses except rent were taken care of the water, the everything. And my health insurance was different. But when I moved to this area, things were a little pricier, and I was a little hesitant to spend the amount of money that was the monthly fee to join. So I asked if there were any volunteer opportunities. And she said, I'll let you know. So she said, she called me. She said, well, we have a director of senior events, and she's never had a volunteer, but she's willing to try. And what you would need to do is you would need to answer because she's not able to when she gets phone calls, very often weeks go by before she gets back to these people. So if you could handle her phone calls. And the deal was that I could come in, get her messages, return the calls, and every day that I was there, I could work out at the Y free. And I did that for a number of years, and it was wonderful because this woman was in charge of seniors and how to age. I learned more in that class. It was every Tuesday. It's called Tea and Talk, and she would have a topic, anything and most of them had to do with aging, socializing, all of that. I learned so much and kind of exercise that you need and how cardio is good for the brain. I learned a great deal. But after a couple of years, I kind of felt like I'm just not doing enough. And there was a woman in my yoga class that every day when I saw her, she had this t-shirt. It said Child Watch. And I said, well, what is that? And she said, well, I volunteer uh, 4 hours a week and I get free um, membership. So I spoke to the woman. I said, well, can I volunteer in Child Watch? She said, oh my God, we really need people there. So I went from just occasionally, whenever I felt like going to make these phone calls, to a regular 4 hours a week. And that was wonderful because I was dealing with little infants, toddlers. The oldest child there was like 8. I got to that place at my age where I hated little children. I mean, I don't say hated, but they annoyed me, you know. And I learned how to love these children. As a matter of fact, when I see a child on the street or in the store, I engage with them. I never did that before. So it was more for me than anything else. I really do believe that older people and little children belong together. I mean, it's just wonderful. So up until the pandemic, I did that. But during the pandemic, they shut everything down and they have not been able to reopen that because they're having a hard time finding people to work. Most people thought it was all volunteers. I said, no, there weren't volunteers. Most of them were staff. There were just a few volunteers. As a matter of fact, I think on all my shifts, I was the only volunteer. So, because I like volunteering, I now volunteer at our local animal humane society, one day a week, one morning a week, and then we have a community of that's for older people who might need help, like uh, tech help or or having somebody take them to the doctor or go with them to the doctor or various programs. It's just wonderful. And there again, it's like $750 if you join, but you can volunteer. And I volunteer every Friday. I'm there to answer the phone and whatever they need. And it's introduced me to a whole new community of people. So I really and truly believe volunteering is wonderful. And I'm glad that I have these opportunities. It's twice a week. One is on Monday and one is on Friday. So uh, yeah,
So you've said at the very beginning what year you were born, but for those of us that are dyslexic and forget numbers, how old are you?
I'm going to be 86 in February. I'm 85 years old.
Eve, you're such an inspiration. You
Hardly.
truly, truly, you are an inspiration. You model what you do and what you say and how well it turns out to be doing what you're doing, to have what you have and be who you are. So,
I'm blessed. I'm really blessed. And just what? Because I have a disease that all this happened to me. I mean, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I'm addicted to sugar and grains because if I didn't know that, I would have never come on this journey. And who knows? As a matter of fact, I have an app on my phone that connects me to my medical records. iPhone, if you have an iPhone, is a little heart. And I happened to be looking at it, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and it gave the diagnosis that I was pre-diabetic. Pre-diabetic after not having sugar for almost 30 years. So I talked the next time I saw my doctor, I said, I noticed that you have me down as pre-diabetic. How come we never had a conversation about it? And she said, Eve, I know what you do. I know the exercises. I know your food plan. There's nothing that I could tell you to change. You are in your 80s. Things start, it's just, I mean, they don't work the same. Your pancreas isn't working like it did before. And so I have that tendency. I know because I had gestational diabetes when I was pregnant. So if it wasn't for this, I probably wouldn't even be alive today. There's no question that this is what's kept me alive. So when I say I have a blessed life, I have a blessed life and that I'm alive.
So 85 and alive and almost 86. Oh my goodness. So
Yep.
Eve, thank you so much for sharing your story and being such a model of a food addict in recovery, doing the things that you do both in your 12-step rooms and outside of your 12-step rooms to support the incredible life that you lead. So thank you.
Well, and one of the reasons that I do this, I have two daughters. When I first moved here, my daughters have friends whose parents are my age, and most of them have to take care of their parents. So I made a promise to myself that I was going to stay as healthy as I could for as long as I could so that I wouldn't be a burden on my children.
Could you tell one exercise that you recommend to all of us?
Walking. It's the easiest exercise, doesn't cost anything, a good pair of shoes, and you don't really have to walk a lot. Um, And one of the things that I learned in one of these team talks is the best thing you can do. You can walk regularly, and then if you just speed up for a block just to get your heart going, and then go back, that's the best thing you can do. People always think you have to do hours. Well, even if you did 10 minutes at a time, you do it 3 times, it's 30 minutes. Right now, my children are away and I'm taking care of the two dogs. So I'm walking at 6 o'clock in the morning. So that's 2 miles. Then I take them out in the afternoon. As a matter of fact, as soon as we finish, I'm going to take them, and that's probably another 2 miles. And then I take them after dinner, which is probably another mile. So there's my 10,000 steps, and I haven't even worked at it.
Do you get down on the floor and get back up off the floor?
I do. As a matter of fact, during COVID, when we couldn't do anything, I did everything on Zoom. Uh, and I hooked into this wonderful woman who does yoga from LA. And the things that she said is get on the floor and get up off the floor as many times as you can. And I'm going to tell you to do the same thing. I love having my daughter's two little dogs, and not my dogs. I get on the floor and play with them because the best thing you can do for your hips and everything is to be able to get down on the floor and get up, get down on the floor and get up. Um, so that's really important. And it's easy. It doesn't cost anything. A lot of people get down on the floor and they don't know how to get up. Well, you can practice. I mean, get a chair or something next to you and just if do it often enough, you're going to be able to do it. It doesn't happen just like that. During the whole pandemic, I was looking at all sorts of things to do on YouTube. I learned how to do dancing. There was another, I haven't done it lately, but I did it all through the pandemic, and that's walking. There's a woman, I forgot what her name is right now, that
Leslie, was
is
it?
Leslie, walking with Leslie, and different speeds. And there are people in that group that are in their 80s and 40s and whatnot. And I did that. There wasn't a single day that I didn't miss. And, I was lucky enough that I could walk outside as well because I live in a small town. But there's no excuse. There's no excuse not to do something. There's a YouTube for everything. You want to do bands, there's show you how to do bands. There's yoga in chairs. There's yoga and all kinds of exercises. I did a lot of them because you know, there was one yoga instructor that you said that used to say, motion is lotion. Motion is lotion for your hips, all your joints. If you don't move, they stiffen up. You gotta get that lotion, get that motion going.
And not eating grain and sugar reduced the inflammation in my body so enormously that the joints in my body and my feet stopped hurting and didn't hurt for about 25 years at all. And now I have occasionally an aching joint here or here, where I tried to be Superwoman with the bottles. I know where it came from. But the consequences of my past actions, I get to live with today. So I get to make the new consequences for my past actions today, for tomorrow, and moving on towards 85. Thank you.
Well, and it's never too late to start. I mean, a lot of people say, well, I'm too old, I didn't do it. It's never too late to start. I mean, I started my journey really at 70 on this program. I started not eating sugar or carbs at 55, but I was working. Didn't have the time like I have now, but it's never too late.
Eve, thank you for such hope and such vitality and such an optimistic and positive attitude. You're,
And Cindy, thank you so much. You've been an inspiration to me too.
thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One day at a time, right? One day at a time.